This pandemic has spread faster than any disease in modern history.
Angry mobs roam the city, burning buildings.
Authorities are bracing for more rioting
There are
tonight.
fires burning, there are people being...
He was knocked unconscious instantly.
A citywide emergency has been declared.
The CDC has quarantined the lower Midwestern region of the U.S.
If you were a nerdy kid in the early 2000s like myself, chances are that every Saturday night you ran to the nearest room with a TV and turned on Toonami. This was my first exposure, for better or worse, to the world of anime. One such anime was Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, the anime where kids my age got to pilot giant robots and blow the crap out of anything they saw. Gundam Wing was the bomb, with killer mech designs, edgy protagonists, and underlying themes of warfare and equality that I didn't catch until years later. There was something here for everyone.
Earth is in trouble.
Earth is in trouble?
We need the Gundams.
Gundams?
All new Gundam Wing action figure model kits.
Whoa! You bet your ass I'll try to save the Earth. At least, that's what 10-year-old me thought after seeing this commercial. This, ladies and gents, was America's first introduction to Gunpla. Gundam action figure model kits.
Only from Bandai.
You see, kids in the US back then mostly thought of model kits as this. Or this. For us overly sugared ADHD kids, that wasn't enough to keep our attention. Why would we spend all this time building a car? And what do you mean we aren't supposed to play with it? Now, put action figure in front of it, and you have my attention. Bandai wanted to capitalize on the sale of Gundam model kits. The kits were very successful in the Japanese markets. Now, with anime starting to become more popular around the world, and particularly the Gundam series, it was time to branch out into new markets. And I gotta say, this commercial back in the day really did the trick. Well, at least I assume. See, I had far too short of an attention span for anything even remotely more complicated than a Lego set, so I never had any of these kids growing up. But by God do I remember the commercials. Especially this infamous one.
Level 5 Gundam, 17 hours.
Level 4, 3 days.
Oh man, does that bring back memories? Or is it PTSD? Same thing I suppose. This commercial is hilarious, and also banned on the Gunpla Discord channel, so I think that tells you everything you need to know about it. Now, the real takeaway from this infamous commercial is that Gundam kits in the US were broken down into skill levels, rather than being called high grade or master grade. They said, high grade? What's a high grade? Oh, you mean level 3? Yeah. Oh, that there? That's a level 5. But this here? This is level 10. but as silly of a concept as this seems at first, it kinda makes sense. First off, I gotta be honest, the high grade, master grade, and perfect grade naming convention doesn't really make sense. The terms high, master, and perfect in this context are completely subjective. Let's be real, the Tristan isn't a high grade of anything except garbage. When Gundam model kits first came out in the 80s, they didn't have this naming convention either. They stuck with just the scale of the model. It wasn't until the 90s that they created the high grade line, and those kits were a much higher grade of kit compared to those that came before, so it made a lot more sense back then. But as more kits were made, eventually anything with the 1 to 144 scale was labeled as a high grade. On top of that, many model kits commonly seen in the US from brands like Revel, you know what I mean. These model kits already used a similar system. The higher the skill level, the more complicated of a model kit. So it made sense to bring the skill level idea when introducing a model kit line for a new show to a new market. Adding to that, many of the kits that were being released at this time didn't have a grade attached to them, so trying to understand how difficult a kit was to build certainly wasn't easy. Now, from my research, skill level 1 and 2 kits were mostly the no grade 1 to 144 scale models. Skill levels 3 and 4 were mostly high grade kits. And lastly, skill level 5 mostly appear to be the 1 to 100 scale no grade model kits. The original commercial and magazine ads boasted 5 total skill levels. However, as time went on, there were actually 10 skill levels. Everything from skill levels 6, 7, and 8 appear to all be master grades. Most interestingly, thanks to an article by Dustin on Gunpla 101, it appears that skill levels 9 and 10 are apparently perfect grade model kits. However, through all of my and apparently Dustin's research, we haven't been able to find any kits labeled as a skill level 9 or 10. The difficulty name wasn't the only thing that changed either. Most of the kits had altered box art as well. A large majority had GUNDAM in red text over a yellow sidebar, so you knew that you were buying a Gundam kit. The original skill level 1 kits appear to share the box art with their Japanese counterparts, though they do have some translated boxed information. What's interesting is a lot of the US model kits have completely different box art. Here's the box art for the original high-grade Buster Gundam released in Japan. Now, here's the high-grade Buster Gundam that was released in the US. Everything about the box is different. The US box is vertical instead of horizontal. The art of the Gundam itself is totally different. All of the text on the box is in English. And this holds true with a lot of the other kits as well. The no grade level 1 Dual Gundam has different art entirely. It has the same box orientation, but the box has been totally revamped. Now, for my favorite, the no grade Blitz Gundam. Here's the original Japanese box art for the Blitz, and here is the amazing 1 to 144 scale skill level 2 Blitz Gundam, released in the US. Whew, boy. The art is different, everything is in English, however, the box itself has a little hanger bit. That way the kit can be hung up on the toy store right next to all of the other action figures. Bandai really wanted to sell the idea that these were less model kits and more like toys. But as more kits were released, they started bringing over master grade kits. Bandai seemed to have stuck with the original box art. For example, the GP01 and Camphor have their original art, just with the addition of the yellow bar and red GUNDAM text. My favorite though is the master grade GP02. It appears to be damn near identical, just boom. This right here, skill level 8, baby. By around 2005 or 2006 or so, Toonami was hitting a decline. There weren't any Gundam series airing since Gundam Seed in 2004, and Bandai eventually stopped manufacturing the kits specifically for the US audience. Silently, the kits left the store shelves. Someone in a local Gunpla group on Facebook posted that infamous commercial, and it sent me down a nostalgia rabbit hole. Now that I've been building Gunpla for about 2 years, I was curious as to what those original skill level whatever kits were like. Were they just an exact copy of the Japanese kits in a different box, or were they the reject kits that fell off the presses in Shizuoka? Only one way to find out. I hopped on the old eBay, found a couple for sale, and bought them up. Level 2 Gundam. Like 17 minutes. This right here is the Skill Level 2 Sword Strike Gundam. It originally came out in 2003. It features around 5 points of articulation, a few stickers, and very mediocre color accuracy. I'll be honest, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. Now, the ads for these kits advertised near endless articulation. However, it honestly feels like the articulation for these kits never started. There are no joints for the knees or elbows. The rest of the parts that do articulate can only move a few degrees before immediately popping off. I do understand that this is a no-grade kit, and they generally are much more basic than high-grade kits. But man, I would be disappointed as a kid to have this as my action figure. I gotta hand it to him though, the box art was far more honest about what you got in the box. I'm so used to seeing fully painted and panel-lined art on the side of the box, I was almost blown away when I saw that they advertised the totally plain, unpainted kit on the side. The quality of the plastic seems totally fine, and it appears to be an identical version to the one released in Japan, so it definitely doesn't appear that the US received any sort of reject kits or anything of a lower quality. Some of the kits overall just aren't that great, but I think more importantly, they don't make for great action figures. Building this kit was such a weird experience. This kit was apparently released in 2003. That same year, plenty of interesting and great HGUC kits came out. The High-Gog, the Zaku 2, and the Zeta Gundam all came out this year. Hell, even the HG Buster Gundam came out, and it wasn't that much more expensive. Even by the time these kits released, they seemed dated. Now, I couldn't have been the only one that thought this way, right? It turns out, no, I wasn't. In America's Gundam Official Guide, released in 2002, the authors detail a little bit about the history of the model kit releases in the US. In this section, it's revealed that many of the kits the US first got in 2000 were released in Japan several years prior. In fact, the US kits released for Gundam 0080 in 2002 were originally produced in 1989, making them the oldest ones released in the US yet. So, the US market was playing catch-up. By the airing of Gundam Seed, it seemed that the releases of the kits mostly seemed to be on track. For comparison, I also managed to find the Skill Level 3 Buster Gundam. What I find interesting about the higher level kits is they keep both the grade of the kit and the skill level system in place. I'm not sure what function it serves to have both the HG emblem and the skill level system, but hey, here we are. Luckily enough, my roommate had the original HG Buster Gundam from Japan, meaning that I had the chance to do a one-to-one comparison of the two kits, and what do you know, they are exactly the same. Now, for some, that won't come as any sort of surprise. However, when doing research for this video, it seemed like most of the people felt that the US kits were of a much lower quality, when in reality, they are identical. The instructions are almost identical. The English instructions just have been translated and have some different graphics. The boxes are really the only thing with notable differences. The Buster Gundam definitely feels like a high grade from 2003, however, it's a pretty decent kit. It's honestly better than the Tristan, not that that's very hard to do. The Buster is definitely lacking in a lot of areas, especially when you compare it with the new HG Seed kits that have been released. Many of the kits around this time were just more simple than what we are used to today. Take a look at the 1:100 scale Wing Gundam here. It was a skill level 4 in the US. It's also strangely labeled as a high grade, which is just wild to think about having a 1:100 scale high grade today. Or take a look at the 1:144 scale Epion. It has a total of 2 separate colors and very basic features. It was a skill level 1 kit in the US. These kits had less articulation, less color separation, and some questionable molding on parts. However, it's like looking at a Toyota Camry from the early 2000s while you're sitting in your Ferrari. Of course it looks kinda crappy now, but back then, it did the trick. I really don't want to sound like I am totally just trashing these 20-plus-year-old kits. Injection molding technology has come a long way, and the engineering that went into this kit still needs to be applauded. For example, I absolutely hate this stupid 80s masala. It required so much glue and has an astonishingly low amount of articulation. Fast forward to 2002 and you have a kit that requires no glue, has multiple points of articulation, and is pretty foolproof to put together. By comparison, the Sword Strike is phenomenal. Growing up, I had tons of Gundam action figures. I had several of the really sick battle-scarred Gundam figures. I had a few normal Gundam action figures, and I even had these really cool SD Gundam toys with interchangeable parts. The great thing about these toys was, for the most part, you just popped them out of the box and boom, you're ready to play. There was no build time. Sure, you might have had to pop a couple parts on, but you didn't have to build the entire toy yourself. Now I can hear you already. But what about Legos? You have to build those. And you're right, that's true. But Lego had some other things going for it. First, the build quality on those was way higher. None of the Lego kits that I built as a kid fell apart when I was playing with them, unless I wanted to, or I dropped it. Plus, with Lego sets, you can use the parts from one set in another set with absolutely zero effort. Building your own creation is a breeze. Most Gundam kits don't make that easy. Yes, you can kit bash, and a lot of kits have the same joint connections. However, many times this requires cutting, gluing, or permanently modifying pieces. I didn't have time for that. Even with modern kits with insane build quality, I can't say that I would want to play with them. There are still plenty of parts that pop off and get lost into the aether. And could you imagine being a kid, spending 2 weeks of allowance on a new toy, bringing it home, only to have to spend hours building it yourself? Look, I give credit to the kid in the commercial. 10-year-old me would have been like, man, screw this, I'm just gonna go play with my other toys. And I think that's what contributed to the disappearance of these kits, at least for a while. A lot of kids just didn't feel like building the kits, especially since many of the kits had action figure counterparts that you didn't have to build. However, I think the real nail in the coffin was a lack of a Gundam series airing in the US. After Gundam Seed aired in 2004, there was never another Gundam series to be played on Toonami before it too went off the air.
Well, this is the end, beautiful friends. After more than 11 years, this is Toonami's final broadcast.
But here we are, 16 years after the last Gundam show aired on Toonami, and 12 years after it was cancelled, and it's back. And from the ashes rose new Gundam series. Iron-Blooded Orphans, Unicorn, and now Gundam The Origin all grace those Saturday nights once more. Bandai has also partnered with Bluefin Brands to distribute Gundam model kits to the US once again. Now you can find Gundam model kits in most hobby stores, and even at some Target stores. How cool is that? In a time where we won't know what the next day will bring, or if we will be allowed to leave the house, or if it's even safe to leave our house, sometimes we can't help but to think back to when times were better. For me, that was enjoying Saturday nights with Tom and watching all sorts of cool TV shows. When life speeds past us, we get hit with crisis after crisis, and we start keeping track of time differently. Sometimes we just need to slow down. Slow down and do what makes you happy. In my case, that's building Gunpla. Regardless of grade or skill level, I always enjoy slowing down, opening a kit, and seeing what's in store. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
Oh no! Sandrock, no! Curse your sudden and inevitable betrayal! Ah!